Welcome to Relationships on Reddit. In this series, we look at posts on Reddit. We'll check out some of the responses. I'll provide some coaching questions for exploration, as I would for a client who is in this situation. Then finally, I'll provide my commentary at the end of just being myself, unfiltered and unadulterated. Hi, I'm Janelle, the relationship coach behind The Successful Invisible. Check out my links below if you're interested in working with me for group coaching or one-on-one coaching. The goal of exploring these posts is to have you become more discerning, intentional, and successful in your dating and relationships. Now let's jump into this Reddit post today that talks about kind of a sticky subject for many, and that subject is money, especially in this case when OP has it and she wants to make sure her suitors have their own as well. On the Dating Over 40 Reddit, this post says, mentioning money in a dating profile, ever a good idea? I earn an excellent salary. I have a lot of money saved and invested, and I'm a frugal person. I don't expect to meet a guy who earns what I do because I know that's unrealistic, but I want a guy who is financially sound. Saying any of that in a dating profile seems like it would come across so negatively. Should I just leave it out? Leave things up to chance and figure out later whether a guy is financially sound? If I just say in the profile I want a financially sound guy, I'm pretty sure that will come across to some guys as gold digging, which couldn't be further from the truth. I just don't want to carry anyone. On a related note, I do fear screening out a great guy. It's really common for people to carry debt, for example. That doesn't mean I couldn't love him. I'm just not sure how to approach this money issue in dating. So this first response is from Lobo Lurker, and they said, don't mention money unless you want to attract people who want your money. And Wonderfully Law says this. I agree with this point wholeheartedly. Mentioning money in a dating profile in the manner that OP is stating can instantly attract basically hobosexuals or raggedy broke men. And we don't want that. Squeeze Me Macaroni says, I put looking for someone to retire early with. Not sure if that helped or not because I got so-so matches, but the guy I ended up with did say that line was what caught his attention because he's looking for that as well. So it sounds like that's a way you can infer without directly stating your own financial status on a dating profile, but you can infer what you're looking for, which based upon the way it's written, to me, that inference is saying, I myself am very financially stable and I have that expectation of my partner. So I think that is actually a really tasteful way to state it without being blaringly obvious. And also, to me, it's a little bit of a repellent to men who are seeking to take financial advantage of women on dating apps. Now, this next response prompted a little bit of back and forth and differing opinions. So Hierophant-74 says, I don't see anything wrong with seeking someone emotionally, physically, and financially healthy. No need to elaborate. But then Glittering Window 258 says, while there's nothing wrong with it, what does that generic statement actually accomplish for anyone? It always comes off somewhat presumptuous. Profiles should be used to describe yourself, not talk at your audience, and expecting strangers to self-select against criteria that could be defined subjectively by someone. But OP Healing Initiative says, disagree. I went through a phase of financial hardship a while ago, and if a woman said she was looking for financial security, I knew not to bother her. So I think this is a great one because it can go either way. I do agree that that particular line is a little vague, but a man who saw that on a dating profile said that, you know what, if he saw that, he already knew he wasn't at the point in his own personal life to be a comparable match and a compliment to that woman. So it seems like it does maybe head off some gentlemen who are a little more self-aware in the profiles. So it's a line to potentially think about including. Here is another response that has quite a, some detail to it, some meat to it. So Futuristy Ken says, honestly, if you can fit a slightly more concise version of what you said in your post, the right guy won't read it as negative. That said, I'm a great guy, and I'd swipe left just because I don't think of myself as offering the kind of financial security you seem to be looking for in a match, which is fine. I work in higher education, which isn't any kind of way to get rich in the country I live in, unless you're a football coach. So I don't have the scratch to, for example, have as many stamps in my passport as I'd like. But just because I'm a great guy doesn't mean I'd be a good match for you if traveling several times a year is important for you. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure I'd actually worry too much about screening out some otherwise great guys. You're great, but not for me is a real thing. And you shouldn't feel bad about it. It's admirable you're thinking about it, but I don't think it's shallow to want to be with someone that's financially independent if you are. Now that was a very well thought out response from a man, and this is why I love the Dating Over 40 Reddit. You have like people who can articulate and all that jazz. So then the OP comes back and says, this is what I'm talking about. I'd love to date someone who works in higher education. That sounds interesting. Putting anything like that, what I wrote in my post, could easily be misunderstood in a dating profile. So then Futurist Ken says, oof, well, I guess I did misunderstand, but I still believe there's a way to get your message across. Can you say more about who you're trying to filter if it's not guys like me? So it sounds like OP doesn't mind a man who's quite educated, because most people in higher education do have several master's degrees and or PhDs, so highly educated people. So she respects that, even if their money may not align exactly to that. But I understand her leaning or desire to, or be open to dating that demographic of individuals. Here's another great response. This is from Difficult Aioli 6631. They say, no, do not mention financial status in your profile like that. One, you're making yourself a target. You don't need to disclose this. You can say when you start talking to the guy that you want, sure, but do not open in your profile that you have money, that you need someone to be sound, etc. I am solely thinking of your safety on that. That's a very good point. But definitely disclose this to them when you're doing the basic meet and greet. But you can also do it in a more subtle fashion. Ask them what they do. Do they live alone? Own a home? Kind of gauge the conversation based on how they answer. I would likely go this route. A financially struggling individual is going to give away eventually, as they won't be able to match you. They live with roommates / at home, they have debts, etc. So you'll be able to discern that. You can be upfront, but I'd be extremely cautious about telling them you are well off, because just like women like to use men for money, men too do the same thing. And that is a very good point. What I like about this response is more so taking a different route, playing the long game for safety's sake, which is very important because, as they said, there are male gold diggers too, just like women can be gold diggers. And in this day and age, with everybody being so connected, you could be putting yourself at risk unintentionally just by certain things you put in your profile. So it may be best to kind of pull back and not really state that. And just when you have your first face-to-face meeting, ask those questions that are going to help lay out a story or tell a story about this potential, partner's financial status. Moving on, we're going to jump into a segment that I like to call green flags and red flags. We basically look at the post that I just read through, and from a coaching perspective, I'm going to identify some of the green flags and the red flags to help you become a more informed and better person to date, and better when you go out on your own dating exploits and adventures to make wiser decisions. The post contains subtle indicators or green flags that can be promising for someone seeking a meaningful relationship, despite maybe initial concerns about the, money and things like that. So here are some of the green flags that I noted. Number one, financial responsibility. So OP's emphasis on being frugal, savings, investment demonstrates that she is a very financially responsible individual, which is a positive trait in a potential partner. She's also mindful and kind of thinking through, how to display that on a profile. What she's saying is she is a planner, she's stable, which are very attractive qualities in a long-term partner. But also the fact that she's bringing her conundrum or lack of clarity or surety, excuse me, on how to put this in her dating profile to Reddit just to ask for some general feedback. Another green flag is she said she had realistic expectations. She acknowledged that she is a high earning lady, and she acknowledged that it's unrealistic to expect her partner to earn the same amount. Shows that she is pretty grounded and reasonable in her outlook. And she's asking for more so a man to be financially stable and independent on his own, even if he doesn't match what she makes. I don't 100% think that she would be unrealistic to ask for a man who's on par with her, but I understand what she means in going on most dating apps. Her perspective right now is it really highlights flexibility and understanding, which are important in fostering healthy relationships. So she's just not looking to carry anyone. And I think that is huge. So that leads to the third green flag, which is clear preferences. She is a very financially sound person, a very financially, I would say more than stable, probably financially prosperous individual. So she is seeking a man who is financially stable on his own and won't require her assistance. And communicating that honestly is what she has a desire to do. Whether or not to put it in her dating profile is the question of the day. And I think the posters and the responses have given her some great things to mull over and think about. Clarity and self-awareness, her clarity and self-awareness are vital for aligning with a compatible partner. And even in one of the responses where the gentleman was in higher education, she said, I'd love to date a man in higher education, even though she realizes, like he even said, I may not be the high earner that you're seeking if you want to travel several times a year. But she has a high respect and a great respect for someone in that setting because they usually have a high level of education. So her clear preferences, she's looking for a man who's on the upper echelon, who's done a lot of their own work in terms of education and, working and finances, which is fair. This is the dating over 40 Reddit. These are grown ass people. So she had some very good green flags, clear green flags in what she was requesting. In her responses, based upon how she was responding to people, but also in her post itself. So there were a few red flags that could be inferred from her post. I'm looking at this not just from the view of what I would write or what I would go over my clients to include, but looking at it holistically, here are some red flags. The first one is potential perceived materialism. Because she is very concerned about finances to the point she's thinking of putting it in her dating profile, the perception could be that she's very materialistic. That wouldn't be my first perception, but it can be perceived that way. Mentioning financial matters can be perceived as a turnoff of materialism or gold digging by potential partners. And that can detract from her genuine intention of just really conveying a fact of what she's looking for versus, trying to send some coded message to get in some man's pockets. Another red flag is an overemphasis on money. If she would lean too heavily or try to put too much in her profile about that, that can be off-putting and make someone think, she's only worried about money. She's either only worried about hers or only worried about mine or something. It could provide, or it could be a block to an emotional connection with a potential partner. And one of the third red flags, and she even mentioned it herself, I don't want to screen out potential matches. That she acknowledges that. And if she would put the, finances or any inference of that in her profile, she may screen out men who themselves think that they would not be on her level financially, which makes sense, especially considering even in the comments, there were men saying, no, the one man, he got it. He said if he saw it at the time he was, in financial, some things were going on, he knew he wouldn't have been that guy. But the other guy was more so the situation she's worried about, the gentleman in higher education, where he took himself out of the game. And she's like, no, you're exactly the type of guy I would be interested in. And he needed a little more information to see, okay, who exactly are you trying to catch with your filter talking about money? So that, I think, is, a red flag, but it's something to make OP really think about how she states something in her profile and how it can maybe make some men, disqualify themselves, and they're exactly the type of men that she's interested in potentially dating. Now we're moving on to some coaching questions. These are the type of questions that I would ask in a session, during a coaching session with a client who is experiencing a similar situation to what I described in the Reddit post in their own dating lives. The purpose of these questions is to better inform you about your decisions in dating, gain more self-awareness, gain more awareness of other people's circumstances, and be prepared to pivot, move, and make wiser decisions in your own dating lives. Question 1. How important is financial compatibility in a relationship, and what does financial soundness mean in the context of an ideal partner? This question is awesome because financial compatibility is so very important in this day and age, and understanding that what is like the second leading cause of divorce is, or it's in the top 5, I know that, is finances. So asking that question to yourself early and before you even get into any type of partnership is going to be paramount to your success and the way you decide upon the people you decide to date. It will be a guiding force, not the only guiding force, but it's very important, and you need to consider that. Like, we don't live in a Disney movie. Finances are important. Question 2. What qualities or behaviors indicate that a potential partner is financially sound, and how might these be assessed without explicitly mentioning money in a dating profile? Great question. I want you to really think about this because it's going to look a little different for every person and how you go about approaching this. If you're a little bit more direct and straightforward, you may ask a lot of questions about career and lifestyle up front. If you want to take a more subtle approach, you may really gauge that based upon where you go, like places you guys go for dates, things that they do in their spare time. You may take a more stealthy approach to it. Either way, you definitely want to get some concrete information about their just financial soundness overall. And if once you get into an actual relationship, then you can ask more very pointed questions and understand what their finances look like, what their debt looks like, etc. Question 3. When considering mentioning financial expectations in a dating profile, what potential outcomes and perceptions might arise, and how do they align with the type of partner being sought? I am going to say mentioning in the dating profile needs to be done in a very subtle way. And also look at the dating websites you're going on to match with people. There are very popular apps and websites out there, but there are also more niche, higher cost, who are catering to a higher income audience as well. So it's not just what you say in your profile, also look at the dating apps or websites that you're using, because you're going to be capturing a different demographic. If you're using the more mainstream ones that everybody knows about versus the more niche ones that are more catering to, educated folks, maybe Ivy League people, 6-figure earners, C-suite people. they are out there, as well as using a matchmaker. That's always an option. It's a pricey option, but that's also always an option. So it's not just what you put in your profile, it's also the places that you're looking and displaying that profile is going to really determine the type of partner or potential matches that you will meet. Question 4. Who are the people or sources that can give insight into balancing financial discussions in dating, and how might their expectations guide the approach? I think a great source for any, woman in this predicament, which is sometimes, or many times actually, the ladies that I am very blessed enough to work with in my coaching practice, are YouTubers. Look at influencers, look at other professional Black women who have a presence online, and kind of get a sense of what they're saying and how they do things. They may not have something directly related to dating profiles, but they'll likely have some nuggets of wisdom to kind of give you to give people a feel of what would be helpful in putting in a dating profile, especially if you are a high earning woman. So I would definitely implore anyone who is not sure about that, go just check on your social media, and I'm sure you follow some folks or have heard of some folks, or can even look them up on different platforms to see who are the ladies who are high earners, who look like you are kind of doing what you're doing, or really financially independent, and how they're going about dating. And that'll give you some great insights. Question 5. Where does financial stability fit with the broader set of qualities and values being sought in a partner? And how can these be communicated effectively in a dating profile? To me, this would be summed up when you're talking about stability and you mention it more than once in your profile. I believe that stealth or subtlety would definitely better than being outright, because many of the responses said you don't want to make yourself a target, but you also want to make it clear but subtle that you're looking for someone who has his shit together. And so financial stability is important, and it fits the broader characteristics of what grown women are looking for in a partner. Nobody's out here looking for a dude trying to, waste time. Even for the ladies who are looking for hookup partners, they're not worried about putting that type of information in those profiles. They're putting different type of information because they are seeking men for a very specific role or task in their lives. But when we're talking about finances, we're talking about more so looking at partnership and long term. So subtlety, but said more than once in the profile and in more than one way, would likely best send the message that, hey, I'm looking for somebody who has their stuff together. Likely because I have my stuff together. And you can convey that in a way and not talk about your own money as well. Now let's jump into a section that is just my thoughts. I want to give you my unadulterated feedback on this. I answered the questions in the last section, but definitely just to go a little more into this particular area and some kind of words of wisdom for the ladies out here who are in these dating streets, especially on these apps, trying to really navigate and do the best and safest thing for themselves. Let's get into this. So, finances on dating profiles, when you have your stuff and all your ducks in a row, is important. But as I'm just going to reiterate what I was saying with the questions, it needs to be subtle. Saying the word stability in more than one context is going to convey that message, as well as having pictures. I think it's a two-part thing. Saying it more than once in your profile, not repeating the same line, but emphasizing that it's important. And then also having very curated and current pictures that show you are stable and together. I think together, those are sending a certain message that will, A, intimidate men who aren't financially stable, weed them out very quickly because they will be too uncomfortable to respond, for the most part, not 100% guaranteed, but they'll be too uncomfortable to respond for the most part. And B, the men who are seeking something like-minded, they will be like, oh, okay, everything is very cohesive. The messaging is cohesive and a very well written, thought out profile. And I noticed she mentioned stability more than once. And then she has a set of pictures that really gives a good impression that she is well-rounded. Fitness pics, food pics, travel pics. Those are just, and when I say fitness pics, I mean things that are tasteful. We're not going for a skin show here. I believe putting that cohesive message together in a dating profile is going to convey that. Back to another point about finances. Not just what you put on your profile, but where you have dating profiles. The where is important. There are some more upper echelon, higher class dating platforms for, as I said earlier, college graduates, people that have PhDs, people who've been to Ivy League, people who are C-suite, six-figure earners, etc. Even sugar daddy and sugar baby websites, though that's not the bend of this. The point is, there are platforms for different types of interactions. And if you want a more upscale interaction, it likely would behoove you to do some research on those platforms that aren't just the mainstream ones that we hear about people complaining about, because those are kind of catch-all and they're lower cost. Going for platforms that are a little more niche, a little higher end, a little more expensive, you're going to get a different result. Not a perfect result, because there are men who aren't ready for a relationship or aren't good relationship material at every socioeconomic level. But you're more likely to attract the type of men you do want if finances are important, because they're investing the money as well, because they're looking for a partner. They're looking for a different caliber of woman. And they understand they're likely going to get that as well on these more expensive platforms. So I think that's the other part of it. In real life events, so finances, okay, this is not a foolproof system, but when you're trying to weed out a lot of time finances, people go where they're comfortable going to socialize, communicate, etc. If you're going to more higher end places in real life as well, you're likely to meet more higher earning men, because men who don't earn a lot or aren't earning as much usually don't circulate in those spaces unless they're gigolos or con artists. So you have to be careful, but it's not foolproof. But like for example, you're more likely to meet a man that's a higher earner in an environment like a 5-star hotel happy hour at the Ritz-Carlton or something, versus going to just a local happy hour at kind of a mid-priced restaurant. You know what I mean? Not a low-end restaurant, but a mid-priced or chain restaurant. You see, so you're going to meet a different caliber, different tax bracket of man going to higher, more expensive, classier places. Not a foolproof guarantee that the guy is not is the best guy in the world, because like I said, there are men who are not dateable and not partnership material at every socioeconomic level. But really paying attention to where you're going in real life, going to higher, more expensive places, as well as putting your profile on more expensive niche sites that are in alignment with what you want, you're likely going to attract a different caliber of men. But finances is very important, and finances is something also that needs to be considered kind of early and upfront. Don't try to skirt that conversation because you want to know exactly what you're getting into. The last thing you want to do is put yourself where you have fallen for this person, or you're in love with this person, but they are completely financially incompatible. It's a very unwise move. Women already face one pay gap based upon gender, and Black women face two pay gaps, one on gender and one on race. So it's a very self-sabotaging move to partner with a man who makes substantially less than you. A lot of people don't like that take, but it's true. One of the Nobel Prize winners, I believe, one of the most recent ones, can't remember her name at the moment, but she won the Nobel Prize, and she was specifically studied gender pay gaps for the past, I want to say 20 or 25 years. That's real. There are statistics around it. So you're doing yourself a total disservice if you do that. Also, if you do that and you partner with someone, meaning marriage, meaning contractually, who makes substantially less than you and you're the woman, you're going to get screwed in court and probably have to pay him alimony. Unless you guys really work a lot of things out and have a prenup signed, and a lot of people don't take that step. But it is wise, especially when you are partnering and marrying in your 40s, because you are more established. You're starting to see the fruits of all the labor that you've put in and all the sacrifice. So it is best when you really focus on dating men who are on par with your level of earning. It will save you a lot of stress, to me, and maybe even jealousy in the relationship down the road. Thank you for joining me today for this episode of Relationships on Reddit. Watch this video again. Answer the question several times. It's okay. Let me know your thoughts around my thoughts on some of the questions as well. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. The more we can have these conversations amongst ourselves, with one another, with other women, the more we can gain the insights we need to gain to date in a more intentional manner and in a safer, more effective manner. If you're interested in working with me one-on-one, check out the links below in the description box. Also, check out my podcast, The Successful Invisible, next season, publishing soon on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Until next time, this is your relationship coach, Jane L, signing off.